Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street IOTA video today. Big news coming out in the last 24 hours. We'll go on to that in a second. Before we do that, do check out our other videos after this one. Many different topics, assets and discussions going on all the time. And also, if you haven't done so already, do smash that subscribe button. And also hit the bell button if you want notifications of all the videos coming your way from ourselves as and when they are delivered. Guys, IOTA, big news. So we've covered this a multitude of times over the last year or so. The European Commission, huge organisational infrastructure that looks after pretty much anything and everything regarding Europe, obviously. And this can be anything to do with things like framework, regulations, laws. It could be protocols for energy, absolutely anything you can think of. Bringing the European countries together under one umbrella. Now, European Commission arguably is one of those umbrella points underneath things like the World Economic Forum, etc. So it does filter down eventually. Now, you may remember last year we covered a few projects, Riddle, Scott and IOTA being another one, as part of a procurement program, a pre-commercial procurement program. We'll go into a bit more detail about this if you haven't watched the previous videos. But the big news here is that IOTA has made the last final three that will go to the final stages of development and testing for the new mechanism of blockchain within the European subsidiaries. Now, what's important to understand here is the application of this particular elements of blockchain. Now, there's many chains out there, there's many projects out there. For various different avenues and sectors, right? We've got financial, we've got data algorithm, we've got supply, logistics, all these things. And we know that IOTA is a huge one. We talk about its Tangle mechanism many times. This is where we derive from the traditional blockchain methods of building the blocks in a chain, hence the word blockchain, but utilizing more of our algorithmic data that can be more autonomous and automated if needed and bypass certain pathways to get to a transaction faster. What we mean by this is like anything and everything. We always use like different examples, of course, but in particular things like healthcare, where you would have potentially like delivery of medication or your history developed into like a digital identity or a DID. This is a big topic right now, and many other applications as well. We talk about it all the time, like harvesting and seeding crops in farms and the logistics aspect of supply and demand of everything and anything around the world. So the aspect of this in particular, the PCP element, this is part of the pre-commercial procurement. This is where we try and identify, or say we, the European Commission is identifying the best technologies possible to apply what it needs to do in these next protocols. So we're not talking about finance as such here. In particular, we are talking about things that are related to things like digital identities, passports, and other means that require some form of cross-border application. So if you can imagine, obviously, you know, the amount of time and money and checking that is spent, for example, you going in and out of countries with your passports, and they've tried their best to obviously digitalize that a bit more with the likes of facial recognition and things like this, especially from the year 01 onwards. But there is more progress to be had. And in terms of like a digital application of this is where it becomes a lot more efficient, both from a cost perspective and energy perspective, but also perhaps as well from a major security, privacy and transparency aspect too. So we talk about this element, many people are talking about, for example, IOTA and many other chains potentially being integrated with the likes of Twitter. This is a big, massive database and an opportunity to integrate Web3 technology to the masses because people are already there and they don't necessarily need to know or understand the technology that's behind everything. They just see the solution. They just see what's in front of them. They go, oh, wow, this is cool. This is new. They don't really care about the background of it or where it's come from or what the integration is or how it's been integrated, how long it's taken. So we've got all these aspects here. So blockchain at the core of Europe's digital future. Big points here. Environmental sustainability. I think a lot of the chains really focus on this anyway. Data protection. This is very much around regulation around privacy and things like this. But this is really important because blockchain does allow verification and processing at a phenomenal speed and verification efficiency. So this is something that's really exciting and something that will continue to develop. The digital identity aspect, we've spoken about this so many times on so many videos. Now, this is the development as we go forward. We already kind of have digital footprints, right, through our use of phones or computers, whatever it might be. But taking this to another level, this is where we get things like the ability to sign documents quicker. We could sell and buy houses a lot quicker because we already have information, our purchasing history, whatever it might be about us as individuals, about what we do, how we use things or do things, all in one system. Digital identity. This is how it works. This is how the framework then continues into the aspect of a whole entire system that can be used across a multitude of countries without having to worry about cross-referencing, checking, and this, that, and the other, because it's already done automatically. A lot of time is saved. Cybersecurity obviously comes naturally with all of this kind of thing, especially with digital assets, tokenization, digital usage in general, and interoperability. This is the big word here about how you bring all these legacy systems or these existing systems around the world into one. And it can obviously have to start in regions. We talk here about the European Commission. The same is going in Latin America. The same is going over in Asia and America, etc., etc. So eventually these systems will have their own one. And then we're talking about like maybe 15, 20 years in advance. This will then eventually blend into one big giant system. So we have to do this in stepping stones. We've already had the last 10, 15 years of the protocols of how crypto work, cryptography, staking, mining, etc. Moving into what blockchain is, then defining what chains can be at an enterprise level and take us to that next journey. And then eventually it will just incorporate into one. You see this with like the dot-com bubble and everything else. Anything in history, whether it's a market change or a sector change, this is how it works. You get a multitude, thousands upon thousands of companies. It then gets restricted in and narrowed into a few. And then you have the big mega ones. I'm not saying there's going to be one monopolizing blockchain and eventually, but for sure, there will be a small handful. So as we go along with our investments and our thought processing, we have to think ahead. And that's why I answered a comment actually from one of the videos the other day about have you sold any of your assets like at losses and moved them into bigger things? And I said yes. The reason I did this, and it's not because I was like, oh, I'm just going to sell it because I'm bored of it. I analysed the gain, loss, or opportunity in the bigger assets like IOTA, HBAR, Quant, etc. And some of the altcoins that I had, or some of the ones that I had low cap and thought, oh, this is going to have longevity or whatever. And I'm not seeing great things from them in these areas. I still hold some of them, but a lot of them I moved across. And because the gain percentage was pretty similar, the values were pretty similar, it didn't really make any difference. Obviously, if you're like extremely negative, it's kind of pointless. You just wait for the upturn or do whatever you need to do. So I now think ahead in a sense of condense my assets from like 42, 43, I think it was, down to 25. I would like to bring that down lower, but I think I'll probably be doing that around 2025 after the next cycle. But this in particular was very interesting to then start thinking ahead about enterprise, about proper top quality assets and solutions and utility. This is extremely important, guys. And it's extremely important to understand like what some of these projects are doing in terms of where they're integrated, what are they working with? And you can't really get bigger than European commissions and things like this. So IOTA has made it. It's made it from a big long list. I think there was over 30 originally, if I remember correctly, from 2020 or 2021. It then got reduced down here. There's some big companies here, and some of them did obviously survive. We've got Orange Business Belgium. I believe it's the old telecoms company, Orange, as well. Riddle and Scott, huge company as well, all the way through this, right? Huge companies. And it's made it to the last three. So we've got Chromaway AB here, and we've also got Billen. Billen Group are huge, guys. I don't think they have a token as such, but they're certainly integrating enterprise solutions right at the top levels. They even insinuate here that regulated markets, $80 trillion worth of GDP, potentially 16,000 times larger than the existing current systems that we have. And this is actually a good point to mention. This is kind of like the stepping stone approach that we just mentioned, that we're around sort of in between these two right now. We're seeing the integration of RTGS and new financial systems But it's starting to trickle into the informal market aspect. And then eventually, when regulation does come in over the next few years, we start seeing regulated markets. This is where the proper money investment comes in, because there's confidence, there's reliability, efficiency, everything. Whether it's $80 trillion, I don't know, but that's a huge amount of money. And that's kind of the systems that we're playing into. Because if we're utilizing blockchains or technologies that are supporting frameworks for this massive area of market, this incorporates so many markets, by the way, this is very exciting. So you can see the progression. And as I said, there's a multitude of different chains and projects, solutions out there. But IOTA, and particularly this conversation, is around specific abilities and utilities of blockchain. I'm not saying IOTA is going to power the euro dollar or anything like this. Digital euro or anything like this. It's more about the specifics of what they're trying to achieve. Digital Europe program, as I've mentioned, many of the infrastructure aspects that they're trying to pull in here. There's budgets there as well, 7.5 billion euros in project money there to enhance this kind of system and aspect. And this continues. The EBSI, European Blockchain Systems as well, is massive. They're working alongside the European Commission to build this, to infrastruct this for anyone and everyone, both businesses aspect and domestic levels too. Even things like this is really interesting. Transcript of records. They've been working with universities, how they can put in towards our digital identities aspects of things like credentials, our diplomas, our degrees, whatever they might be. Because some people have fraudulent activity around that, or cannot prove it, or they lose their documents and things like this, when actually we can have it all in here. It's quite amazing, really. So if you can imagine this on the cross-border payment, especially if you're a student or you're looking to find jobs in Europe and you don't have to worry about visas. You think how long some visa processes take. And some people will say, well, we must have visa applications, blah, 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 because otherwise this and this happens. But that's the whole point of blockchain, is that it's automated and it integrates interlacing like automatically. We don't need to worry about the admin side, the longevity of things. Things can happen and move faster, quicker, more efficiently, reduce cost. The economy grows. Hence, probably why they're anticipating that regulated markets on that billing group thing here is probably also a variable kicking in here of the fact of things becoming more automated, more less admin driven, because that's how as well the economy does grow. So all of these things are really interesting for me, and I'm really pleased to see IOTA pushing through to those final three. So this is the phase 2B of final solution development and field testing, now ongoing with the following three contractors. Now I don't know if one of those gets picked at the end of it, but for sure these three companies are huge in their own right. IOTA we're very privileged to be able to have access to in terms of the tokenization. The other two, as I said, I don't think they have tokens, but they're for sure enterprise blockchain. And this is not new. You've got things like Hyperledger Fabric, for example, that are working with the likes of Accenture, Microsoft, etc., IBM even. And you can't really get tokenizations of those either. And I think they're separate from Ethereum also. So there's some really cool things to get your head around and understand a bit more. I do recommend going through the EBSI website and just having a bit of a read up about them, because this is really interesting, and it furthers my point that these are kind of market areas where you can kind of consider, like, I'm bored of the shield tokens now. Some of them might make it, for sure they have some really interesting utility, but I'm now more interested in a more sensible and lucrative approach. What are the ones that are going to have full infrastructure in the world moving forward, and which ones are probably likely going to buy out the smaller ones anyway, because these smaller ones probably won't sustain themselves. They may have really clever people behind them, but ultimately, like in the real world that we have right now, big companies buy out the small ones, right? And then eventually we have a monopolization. We always say, oh, I wish I was part of this market like 10 years, 20 years, 40 years ago. Well, here's our chance. So this is where we identify what we want to achieve with our portfolios and what's ahead of us, and what assets do we have in front of us to accumulate that are going to have significant influence in the world to come. Guys, let's go into the chart quickly of IOTA before we wrap this video up. Now, the last couple of days, the whole market has been dropping quite a bit. Bitcoin especially pulling a lot of the assets down. This is quite a natural occurrence. So IOTA is at a very nice point of 20 cents again. It's at a buy area that I've been purchasing previously in the last couple of weeks anyway. But I always wanted to quickly mention we still have the two lower buy orders of around 16 cents and just above 10 cents as well. This relates to previous data points that we have back here in March 2020 and some other areas too. Particularly here in December and November 2019. Yes, we are going that far back because IOTA had a phenomenal uprise from 2021 onwards, but now it's on its way down to find its true reflective price right now in terms of its evolution, in terms of its life cycle, where it should be. So we're now at these lower stages. I'm still staking for the assembly token. Shimmer token is still, it's not for staking, but is obviously available now via a protocol of IOTA. But for me right now, this price point is very nice and lucrative at 20 cents, but I do have the lower ones just in case, because I do still believe that Bitcoin could be coming down to that $12,000 or even $10,000 mark. We'll have to see. But as we approach things over the next few months, could be quite interesting. So just keep savvy when you're purchasing and accumulating assets, and make sure you're looking at the decent ones as well. So as I said, the reasoning behind my positions at 15 and 10 cents as well are very much historically based, particularly around the very early stages around 2020. We had this big massive gap upwards. So in my opinion, there is not enough data and support. There is no real proper confirmations of this area being a support mechanism. So as we approach, as I just zoom in a bit here, we've approached this particular barrier on the fib retracement, bang on 20 cents pretty much. The next lower region's around 18 and just above 15 cents. Hence why I've got one buy order, limit order at 16. And I've got one down here around, I think it's 11.5 or 12. I did up it a bit because I made a mistake with quant by missing out by a few dollars, just by a bit of algorithm aspect. So I just upped it. I think it was around 12.2 cents or something silly like that, just to try and trigger that if it does come down. But the balancing act is occurring right now with IOTA. It's still a good DCA opportunity in my opinion right now, and we can confirm this with the RSIs. 39 on the 14-day and 28 days showing 41. So this is a good buy point for me. As you've seen in previous videos of mine, I always like to trigger manual positions in this area. And we can also zoom in a bit more and see the MACD here, still in a negative process right now, but it is narrowing. So I'm going to see some probable like wave activity over the next few days and into the next couple of weeks, really testing this 20 cent mark. It seems like it doesn't particularly want to support itself at 25 cents accurately just yet. And that's this barrier here pretty much on the fib retracement level. As you can see, it's touched down a few times, it's rejected it, it's tried to penetrate a few times and failed thus far in the last week or so. So just keep an eye on this, because if we do have this continuous, albeit slow momentum of sell-off, that could trigger it down to the lower regions and bring these RSIs maybe even lower, maybe seeing like 35 to 38 on the 20-day and perhaps the lower regions of 30, maybe even dipping down slightly lower than that. We did see this back on the 9th of November, by the way. I don't think we'll have an exact repeat of that unless there's something really significant like FTX happens again. But for sure, I do anticipate that we do have a bit of a wave pattern here and an opportunity for some potential savings on accumulating the IOTA token. On the week performance, it's at -5, which isn't too bad. The 3 month and 1 month, I'm not angry about either. This year to date and year is still heavily negative, which indicates to us some really good positivity in the long run, really. If you know that they're integrated with the likes of European Commission and they're working hard on that aspect, this has a real long belief in it. If it does come down lower, fantastic, and that might even drag it even further down, but it shows you the growth aspect that is available to us. I was buying IOTA at a lot of different prices, 50 cents, $1 or something like this as well, maybe even higher. So I'm really appreciative of these lower regions because I can really start hammering my IOTA accumulation here. Let us know in the comments below what you've been doing with your IOTA. Are you excited about this news? And I just think this is a top project. We've got to obviously understand that IOTA is a next evolution of blockchain as well. It has an upper hand against the majority of assets out there. Hedera hash graph is probably very similar in terms of the DAG, direct acyclic graph. Watch our DAG video at the end of this one if you want more information on anything about that. It's very interesting. It's going to change the aspect of how we live our lives, guys, in my opinion. And IOTA is one of those top projects up there that's going to influence that massively. Guys, wow, let's wrap that up. Thanks for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll see you in the next IOTA video. Bye-bye.